Bridget 就读哈佛大学，她是哈佛大学的经济系。那她的 minor 呢是 History of Art and Architecture. Bridget, would you like to do a self-introduction?
A rising junior at Harvard, studying economics and doing a secondary in the history of art and architecture. Yeah, sorry guys, I grew up in the US, so my Chinese is not very good. But obviously I applied to Harvard because, you know, it's Harvard. And I think one of the things that I think is really great is the people that you meet there. And, you know, it's really amazing, like how many people have done so many different things. My roommate is like, she's a professional ballet dancer, you know, stuff like that. So I think it's really about the people that is like just amazing about Harvard.
能不能分享一些有关你们科系的内容 Can you share a little bit about your major 以及为什么你们会去选择这个科系 and why did you pick your majors or double majors or minors if you plan on doing any double?
So I'm an econ major, and honestly, that's kind of the default major. So I think a lot of people, when they don't know what to do, they kind of go with the econ track. So that's kind of what I did because I'm pretty indecisive about, you know, what I want to do in the future. But I think it's a pretty good basis because a lot of it is like economic theory and thinking about how the world works and how, you know, all that kind of like, I guess because it includes a lot of like politics and how that influences, you know, economic situations within the US. I think that it's really helpful, especially because you should, you know, generally learn how to manage your own money and that sort of thing. So that's kind of why I did it.
I have a follow-up question to you, Bridget. I think a lot of people are very curious to hear what preparation work did you do in high school to get admitted into Harvard Economics? 你在高中做了什么准备动作或者活动，让你被哈佛大学录取？
Yeah, so when you apply to Harvard, you actually don't choose a major. You kind of just apply undecided. And for me, I don't think, honestly, there is a way to say like, oh, this is how I got into Harvard because, you know, obviously there are some people like in sports or they like did some sort of like climate justice or whatever to really stand out to get into Harvard. But I think there are also a lot of people like me who are like, oh, I'm not sure why I'm here. And so a really common thing is actually like imposter syndrome. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, like, oh, I don't belong here, you know. But I'm from Hawaii, and I think at my school we had about 5 or 6 people who got into Harvard. And for me, my main extracurricular was the yearbook. So I was the editor-in-chief of our high school yearbook, and it was entirely student run. And then I think I was also on the math team, and I did some like research at a hospital about appendicitis, and then some volunteer work. But I think obviously like anyone can get into Harvard for, you know, different reasons. So I think just kind of depends what they see in you.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a very good point, right? And I think that's something many students need to hear about is that when you're applying currently as a high schooler, you might not even be applying to a particular major or particular program, right? 所以说也希望大家就是 focus on yourself， 做你们喜欢做的事情，找到你们的兴趣，然后大学自然而然会看到你们的努力跟你们的优秀。Bridget, you went to high school in the US. You grew up in the States, right? Were there anything surprising about your transition from high school in Hawaii to Harvard in Massachusetts?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think a lot of people who I went to high school did have trouble going to college on the East Coast because, you know, like the weather, that was honestly the main thing that I heard about. But for me, because I've like traveled a lot, like the weather wasn't a huge thing for me. I know a lot of people have like seasonal depression, so like getting really sad during like the colder months. But I think for me, because I prefer the cold, it wasn't a problem. And I think also the other thing they were talking about being like prepared for classes, that's something that's definitely different. So for me, like when we're assigned to readings, I honestly usually don't even read it. I'll read like a brief summary or like kind of skim it and like just to vaguely know what I'm talking about, you know. So when I go to class and if they ask me a question, which usually they don't, you know, if they do, I'm like prepared to just honestly make something up. And I think that's the case with a lot of my friends and a lot of other students at Harvard. I think there are actually very, very few people who really prepare, you know, 120% for the class. So, yeah.
So we're curious to hear about your life over there and what life is like for a student studying at Harvard or any of the campuses in the area.
Yeah, so I think a big thing is definitely like the Harvard bubble. So a lot of people generally don't leave campus that much, honestly. And I think because everything you need is kind of within campus, obviously, housing is provided, food is provided, and there's like stuff in Harvard Square. I think a lot of people don't take the time to actually like go into Boston, which I've been trying to do more of. My roommates and I like to schedule like weekly dinners or like monthly dinners, just going into Boston and like seeing the city, kind of taking time away from being on campus. And also my little brother actually goes to Tufts. So, sometimes I've gone to Tufts to visit him. And I think there is, because it's such a huge like college city, is that what you call it? But definitely you meet a lot of other college students in the area. So MIT, Northeastern, Tufts, BU, BC. I've run into people I went to high school with, like literally on the street, which is kind of crazy. But I think there's very much like a college community in that area.
Yeah. And I'm going to go straight into a follow-up / the next question on that. Is I think we're all curious to hear about the kind of activities that you guys do in your daily lives in school. So what kind of campus clubs, if you guys do any internships, any research, any kind of extracurriculars. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I am currently the president of Harvard's undergraduate venture capital group. And so there are a couple different venture capital clubs, a lot of finance clubs. There's one huge consulting club, so the Harvard College Consulting Group, I think it's called. And a lot of our clubs are actually super competitive. Like the campus is ridiculously competitive. So each club has what's called a comp. And so you have to complete the comp in order to get into the club. And so the BCG, the club that I am the president of, what we do is called a completion-based comp. And so our goal is kind of to include everyone in like the education of like the VC world. And so what we do is kind of we let everyone into the club, and it's completion-based. So as long as you finish the comp, so you come to all the meetings and you finish the project, then you're in the club. And so it's all about inclusion. But that's not the case for a lot of the Harvard clubs, because I think the whole idea behind Harvard is honestly like exclusion. And you can definitely feel that on campus. Everything is very exclusive. Social life is also very exclusive. We have like finals clubs, which are kind of the equivalent of like frats and sororities, but like you have to be on the list to come to a party. You have to complete, initiation or like all that stuff to join the club. And I think for a lot of people, it can be kind of hard to find their place within, Harvard social life, Harvard like academic life even. And I think there are definitely a lot of people who feel like they don't belong there, as I was saying earlier, with like imposter syndrome. But I think honestly, there are so many great people at Harvard. If you find like the right people, then I think you're set. Like you're totally good. Like my roommates are my best friends, and I have a great time there. So
yeah, you bring up this culture of exclusion, right? Do you think that culture has impacted your experience at Harvard in any way, for better or for worse?
I think probably both. So honestly, like being constantly, I guess, discouraged, you get into the school and you're like, wow, like I was good enough to get here. But then like you don't make it into certain clubs and you're kind of like, wow, I suck, And so I think for a lot of people that kind of ruins their self-esteem. They thought they were good enough. You have to be the best of the best to get into Harvard. But then once you're there, you're competing with the best of the best. So then you had this whole idea of like, wow, I'm good enough to get here. But then I'm actually not good enough. But I think one thing that you have to remind yourself, or like, I guess I like to remind my friends, it's like you made it here, right, for a reason. And I think you can't compare with other people. Or I guess maybe you should compare with other people, maybe at other schools, or like whatever, like, I guess I think we often think about like, wow, we're like top, whatever percent, but we feel like we're like the bottom 50%, So I think that's definitely hard for a lot of people.
That sounds very intense. I'm curious to hear, Bridget, what do you guys do for fun? What do you guys do to relax?
Yeah, for fun, honestly, for me, what I like to do is I like to go to concerts. So I'm a huge fan of music. What I've been doing the last year is really, I've been trying to go to a lot more shows, I go to concerts by myself now, not really like, oh, I need friends to go with me, but I'm just like, I love this music, I'm going to go. I think honestly, for a lot of my friends, most of the time, they don't do anything for fun. Like, it's really like, oh, you go to class, then you come home, you study, you go to your extracurriculars, you come home, you do work, you go to your internship, you come home, you sleep, then you wake up and you do the same thing over again, right? And so I think for me, one of the things that I really focus on is like making time for myself and things I really want to do rather than just, going to class and going to my extracurriculars and coming home.
Got it. Great. Thank you for sharing. The last question, what are your plans after graduation? And do you have any advice for the next class of applicants?
Yeah, I honestly still don't know what I am planning on doing after graduation, obviously, because I didn't grow up in Taiwan. I don't think I would be coming back here. But I'm also not sure about staying in States, given, political conditions, all that sort of stuff. But I think what advice I would give to people applying to college is honestly just try your best and apply. I guess for me, I applied to like almost 30 colleges, right? And obviously that's probably not ideal, but for me, I was just casting a wide net, where like would I be interested in going? And like, where do I think I could get in at all? For me, it was just about like, I should go to college somewhere, right? And I think colleges are always looking for like well-rounded individuals, so, being like great at something, but also being someone who isn't just really focused on one thing and being able to like, I guess being interested in learning is really all it's about. And then also just, I guess like asking for what you want, if you don't ask, you don't get. That's what my parents have always told me. So just putting yourself out there.